Part 1. The Fall of Silver Mist. The palace walls shook as another explosion rocked the city. Queen Yuna gripped the armrests of her crystal throne, her knuckles white beneath pale skin. Through the tall windows, she could see fires burning across the capital. Ships filled the sky, dark shapes that blotted out the stars her people had watched for thousands of years. "My queen, we must evacuate," Commander Hyun said, her sword already drawn. The royal guard formed a protective circle around the throne room's entrance. Their silver armor gleamed in the flickering light of magical barriers that were failing, one by one. Yuna stood, her long white hair flowing behind her like a waterfall. The crown on her head pulsed with ancient power, connecting her to every elf in the star system. She could feel their fear, their pain, their deaths. Each loss was a knife in her heart. "How did they breach our defenses?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. Lord Taman stepped forward from the shadows near the eastern door. His face was calm, too calm for a city under siege. "My queen, I fear our magic is simply not enough against their technology." Something in his voice made Yuna's blood run cold. She had known Taman for 800 years. He had been her father's advisor before becoming hers. She had trusted him with everything. "Where are the secondary shields?" Hyun demanded. "Taman, you were supposed to activate them an hour ago." Taman smiled. It was not a kind smile. "The shields are offline, permanently." The room went silent except for the distant sounds of battle. Yuna felt the crown's power surge as her anger rose. "What have you done?" "What I had to do," Taman replied. He raised his hand, and the eastern door exploded inward. Soldiers poured through, not elven soldiers but creatures in black armor with weapons that hummed with deadly energy. They were Dravaxians, the conquerors who had enslaved a dozen worlds. Hyun screamed a war cry and charged. The royal guard followed, their blades meeting the enemy with the sound of thunder. Magic and gunfire filled the throne room. Yuna raised. Her hands and white light erupted from her palms, turning 3 Dravaxian soldiers to ash. But there were too many. For every enemy that fell, 2 more entered. Hyun fought like a demon, her sword a blur of silver light. She killed 5, then 10, then 15. But a blast from an energy weapon caught her in the chest. She fell to her knees, looked at Yuna one last time, and collapsed. "No," Yuna screamed. Power exploded from her body, throwing back the attackers. The crown blazed like a star, and for a moment she was untouchable. Lightning danced from her fingertips. The marble floor cracked beneath her feet. Then someone shot her. Pain exploded in her shoulder, hot and terrible. She stumbled and another shot hit her leg. The crown's power flickered. She fell to one knee, blood staining her white dress. More guards died protecting her. Their bodies formed a wall between her and the enemy. Through the smoke and chaos, a new group entered. They were human, smaller than the Dravaxians, wearing mismatched armor. Mercenaries. Yuna had heard of humans, the newest species to reach the stars. They were considered primitive by most galactic standards, barely civilized. One human moved differently than the others. He was tall for his kind, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything. He barked orders in a rough voice, directing his team with hand signals. His name tag read, Dae-hyun. Taman pointed at Yuna. "Take her alive. The crown is mine." Dae-hyun's team advanced. Yuna tried to stand, but her wounded leg gave out. She gathered the last of her power, ready to die fighting. But Dae-hyun raised his hand, signaling his team to stop. "Surrender," he said in accented but clear Elvish. "You're hurt, your guards are dead, this is over." "Never," Yuna hissed. She sent a blast of force at him, but it was weak. He dodged easily. Taman walked forward, his eyes fixed on the crown. 800 years of service, and this was his true face. Greed and ambition twisted his features into something ugly. He reached for her head. Yuna felt rage unlike anything she had ever known. The crown responded to her emotions, power building inside it like a star about to explode. Bleeding and betrayed, she snarled, blood dripping from her mouth. "You are not deserving to touch my crown." She grabbed the crown with both hands and pulled. The ancient metal forged in the heart of a dying star began to crack. Taemin's eyes went wide with horror. "No. What are you doing?" he screamed. "If I cannot have it, no one will," Yuna said. She poured all her remaining power into the crown, and it shattered. The explosion was blinding. Pure magical energy erupted outward, a wave of force that could have leveled a mountain. The ceiling began to collapse. Massive crystal pillars cracked and fell like trees. Dravaxian soldiers were thrown backward, their armor melting from the heat. Yuna was at the center of it all, the energy tearing at her body. She would die here, but at least she would deny them their prize. The crown's fragments burned like small suns, each piece containing a fraction of her people's ancestral power. Then someone grabbed her, strong arms wrapped around her body, and she was moving, being carried. Through blurred vision, she saw it was the human, Dae-hyun. He had thrown himself into the explosion to reach her. His armor was scorched, his face bleeding, but he kept running. A crystal beam the size of a tree crashed down where they had been standing. Dae-hyun dove behind an overturned table, shielding her with his body as debris rained down. Something heavy hit his back, and he grunted in pain but did not let go. "Why?" Yuna whispered. "Why save me?" "Orders set alive," he replied through gritted teeth. But his eyes said something different. There was no cruelty in them, no joy in her suffering, just a tired determination. The throne room finished collapsing. When the dust settled, they were trapped in a small pocket of space surrounded by rubble. Yuna could hear voices calling out, searching for survivors. Dae-hyun's team was trying to reach them. She looked at the human who held her. He was nothing like what she had expected. Humans were supposed to be barbaric, violent, short-lived creatures who solved everything with weapons. But this one had risked his life to save hers, even though she was his enemy. "Who are you?" she asked. "Captain Dae-hyun of the merchant vessel Star Runner," he said. "Former merchant vessel. Now we're mercenaries because we had no choice." "You work for them," she said, meaning the Dravaxians. "You helped destroy my world." Pain crossed his face. "Yes, and I'm sorry. But my people, my crew, they'll die if I don't follow orders. The Dravaxians threatened our colony. 3,000 people. I do what I must to keep them alive." Yuna understood that at least. She had done terrible things to protect her people too. But her people were scattered now, hunted. Her world was burning, and she was a prisoner, wounded and powerless. The rubble shifted as Dae-hyun's team dug through. Light pierced the darkness. Rough hands pulled them out into the ruined throne room. Dravaxian soldiers surrounded them, weapons pointed. An officer approached, one of the tall, reptilian Dravaxians. "The queen is secured. Take her to the ship. Lord Taemin wants the crown fragments found." As they put her in chains, Yuna looked back at her throne room one last time. Haeun's body lay among the others, loyal to the end. The crown fragments were buried somewhere in the rubble, scattered and lost. Everything she had built, everything her people had been, was gone. And somehow she was still alive, saved by a human who had no reason to care whether she lived or died. As they dragged her away, she met Dae-hyun's eyes one more time. He looked away first, shame on his face. The last queen of the elves became a prisoner in chains, her crown destroyed, her kingdom fallen. But she was alive, and as long as she lived, there was something left to fight for, even if she did not yet know what that was. Part 2, the human question. The cell was cold and dark. Yuna sat on the metal floor, her back against the wall. Her wounds had been treated, but they still hurt. The Dravaxians wanted her alive and healthy enough to answer questions. They had given her plain clothes to replace her ruined dress. No crown, no jewelry, nothing that marked her as a queen. She was just a prisoner now. The ship hummed around her, engines pushing them through space to some unknown destination. Through the small window in her cell, she could see stars passing by. Her people had traveled among those stars for thousands of years. Now they were scattered, hiding, dying. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Yuna did not look up. They came every few hours to question her. asking about defenses, about hidden colonies, about things she would never tell them. But when the door opened, it was not a Dravaxian interrogator. It was Dae-hyun. He carried a tray with food and water. His armor was gone, replaced by simple clothing. The burns on his face had been treated, but scars remained. He set the tray down near her without speaking. "I am not hungry," Yuna said. "You need to eat," Dae-hyun replied. "They will question you again tomorrow. You need strength. Why do you care?" She finally looked at him. "You are my captor. You helped destroy my world." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down across from her, his back against the opposite wall. "Yes, I did. And I will carry that shame until I die." "Then why do it?" "Because I had a choice," he said slowly. "Let my people die or become a monster." "I chose to become a monster." Yuna studied him. He did not look like a monster. He looked tired and sad. "Tell me about your people." He seemed surprised by the question. "Why?" "Because I have nothing else to do in this cell. And because I want to understand." Dae-hyun sighed. He stared at the ceiling as he spoke. "My home is a small colony called New Haven. 3,000 people. We are farmers and miners trying to make a life on a world far from Earth. We never wanted to be part of any war." "But the war found you," Yuna said. "Yes. 3 years ago, Dravaxian ships appeared in our sky. They said we belonged to their empire now. We could serve them or we could die." He clenched his fists. "We tried to fight. We had no weapons, no warships, nothing. Just farming equipment and a few old mining lasers. We lasted 2 days. What happened? They killed 300 people as an example. Then they gave us new orders. They wanted soldiers, pilots, engineers. Anyone useful. The rest would be slaves. My crew and I, we were chosen to be mercenaries. They told us if we refused, if we failed, if we tried to escape, our families would be executed." Yuna felt a cold understanding settle over her. "So you are slaves too." "We are tools," Dae-hyun corrected. "Tools they point at whoever they want destroyed. Like your world." "You could have refused," Yuna said, but her voice had less anger in it now. "Yes, and 3,000 people would have died. My mother, my sister, my friends. Everyone I ever knew." He looked at her directly. "What would you have done?" She thought about it honestly. What would she have done to save her people? She had already destroyed her own crown to keep it from the enemy. She had killed. She had made hard choices. Could she judge this human for doing the same? "I do not know," she admitted. They sat in silence for a while. Then Yuna asked, "What happened to my people? The ones who survived?" Dae-hyun's expression darkened. "Some escaped before the planet fell. Maybe a few thousand scattered across different ships. The Dravaxians are hunting them. As for those who remained, they are being moved to labor camps." "And Taemin?" "Lord Taemin is the new puppet king. The Dravaxians set him up in a fortress on your world. He gives them information about elven settlements in exchange for power and wealth." Rage filled Yuna's chest. 800 years of trust betrayed for what? For the illusion of power while monsters destroyed everything. She wanted to scream, to destroy something, but she was powerless here. "I should have seen it," she said quietly. The signs were there. His resentment when others were promoted. His questions about the crown's power. I thought he was just ambitious. I did not think he would sell our entire civilization. "Betrayal is always hardest from those we trust most," Dae-hyun said. Over the next few days, Dae-hyun became her regular guard. He brought food and water. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. He told her about humanity, about how they had reached the stars only 50 years ago. "We are new to the galaxy," he explained. "Most species had thousands of years to develop slowly. We went from our first airplane to faster-than-light travel in just 200 years. "That is incredibly fast," Yuna admitted. Her people had taken millennia to achieve the same progress. "Too fast, some say. We made many mistakes. When we met the other species, we were excited. We thought we would join a community of peaceful civilizations." He laughed bitterly. "We were wrong. What happened? First contact was with the Dravaxians. They saw a primitive species with useful planets. They attacked Earth itself, tried to conquer us. They thought it would be easy. But you survived," Yuna observed. "Barely. We lost billions of people. But humans, we are stubborn. We do not surrender even when we should. We fought with everything we had. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, kamikaze attacks. We made the invasion so costly that the Dravaxians eventually decided it was not worth it. They left us alone mostly, but they remembered us. As dangerous, Yuna guessed. As crazy, Daehyun corrected with a slight smile. Humans are known in the galaxy as the species that does not know when to give up. Other species calculate odds and make logical decisions. We calculate odds, ignore them, and do impossible things anyway. Yuna found herself fascinated. She had dismissed humans as primitive before, but surviving a Dravaxian invasion when you had barely reached space? That was not primitive. That was something else entirely. Is that why you saved me in the throne room? She asked. Human stubbornness? Maybe, he said. Or maybe I was tired of watching people die for no good reason. On the 5th day, 2 new humans came to visit her cell. One was a woman with short black hair and grease on her hands. The other was younger, maybe 20, with quick eyes that missed nothing. This is Minji, my engineer, Daehyun introduced, and Jiwon, our pilot. Why are they here? Yuna asked. Minji knelt down, looking directly at Yuna. Because we are planning something stupid and dangerous, and we wanted to know if you would like to join us. What kind of stupid and dangerous? The kind where we steal you away from the Dravaxians, escape this ship, and join the resistance, Jiwon said with a grin. Simple, really. Yuna looked at Daehyun. You would betray your orders? Your people would die. Our people are going to die anyway, Daehyun said quietly. The Dravaxians will never let us go. They will use us until we are dead, then find new tools. We realize something. If we keep following orders, keep doing terrible things, we become the monsters we feared. At some point you have to draw a line. And what is your line? Yuna asked. You, Minji said simply. We saw what you did. You destroyed your crown rather than let them have it. You chose death over surrender. That is not something we can forget. There is a human resistance? Yuna asked. I thought your people surrendered. Most did, Jiwon admitted. But some of us, we are too stubborn. There are fleets, hidden bases, people who still fight. They save refugees, hit Dravaxian supply lines, make life difficult for the Empire. And you think I would be useful to them, Yuna said. We think you deserve better than dying in a Dravaxian interrogation room, Daehyun corrected. What you do after that is your choice. Yuna thought about it. These humans had no reason to help her. Doing so would doom their colony, their families. But they were willing to try anyway because it was the right thing to do. Perhaps she had been wrong about humans. When do we leave? She asked. Minji smiled. 3 days. We need to disable the ship's tracking system and steal a shuttle. Jiwon will fly us out during a shift change. We will have maybe 15 minutes before they realize we are gone. 15 minutes, Yuna repeated. Against an entire battleship. Like I said, Jiwon grinned. Stupid and dangerous, but possible, Daehyun added. We are human. We specialize in impossible. For the first time since her kingdom fell, Yuna felt something other than despair. It was small, fragile, but it was there. Hope. Then I am with you, she said. The 3 humans looked at each other and nodded. They were really doing this. They were throwing away everything for a slim chance at freedom. Yuna understood then what made humans special. It was not their technology or their magic. It was their absolute refusal to accept defeat. Even when logic said they could not win, they fought anyway. She had been a queen. She had ruled with wisdom and magic for 1,000 years. But these humans, these foolish, stubborn, impossible humans, were teaching her something new. Sometimes wisdom meant knowing when to ignore wisdom. Sometimes magic was not as powerful as simple courage. And sometimes the most important thing was not winning. It was refusing to lose. Part 3, Humanity's Defiance. The alarm started exactly as Minji predicted. Yuna heard it through the walls of her cell. A piercing wail that meant something had gone wrong on the ship. Or in this case, something had gone right. Daehyun appeared at her door, weapon in hand. Time to go. Can you run? Yuna stood. Her leg still hurt from the wound, but she could move. Yes. Good. Follow me and do exactly what I say. They ran through corridors filled with smoke. Minji had sabotaged the environmental systems, creating confusion throughout the ship. Dravaxian soldiers rushed past them, heading toward the false emergency in the engine room. No one looked twice at a guard escorting a prisoner. Jiwon waited at the shuttle bay, fingers flying over the control panel. 30 seconds until the door locks override. We need to be in the air when that happens. They climbed into the small shuttle. It was a transport vessel, not built for combat. Just 4 seats in a cargo area. Jiwon threw herself into the pilot seat while the others strapped in. 10 seconds, she counted. 5, 4, 3. The engines roared to life. The shuttle lurched forward just as the bay doors began to close. They shot through the gap with centimeters to spare. Alarms screamed behind them. They know, Daehyun said, watching the sensors. 3 fighters launching. I see them, Jiwon replied calmly. Her hands moved over the controls like she was playing an instrument. The shuttle twisted and dove, moving in ways that should have torn it apart. Yuna gripped her seat as the world spun. Energy blasts streaked past the windows. One hit their rear shield and the shuttle shook violently. Through the viewport, she could see the massive Dravaxian battleship turning to pursue them. We cannot outrun them, she said. Do not need to outrun, Jiwon said with a wild grin. Just need to out-crazy them. She dove toward a nearby asteroid field. The fighters followed. Jiwon pushed the shuttle between rocks under overhangs, through spaces that seemed impossible. The Dravaxians fired, but their shots hit stone instead of metal. One fighter got too close. It clipped an asteroid and exploded in a ball of fire. The other 2 pulled back, trying to find a better angle. Minji, I need more speed, Jiwon called. If I give you more speed, the engines will melt, Minji shouted back from the engineering panel. So give me more speed for 5 minutes, then let them melt. You are all insane, Yuna said. Yes, Daehyun agreed. But we are alive. Hold on. The shuttle accelerated impossibly fast. They burst out of the asteroid field with the 2 remaining fighters close behind. Ahead, empty space stretched endlessly. There was nowhere to hide. Then Jiwon did something that made Yuna's stomach drop. She killed the engines and spun the shuttle around. They were flying backward now, facing their pursuers. What are you doing? Yuna screamed. Something stupid, Jiwon replied. She opened the cargo bay door. Minji had loaded it with explosive containers from the ship. Now Minji. Minji triggered the release. The containers tumbled out into space, floating toward the fighters. Jiwon waited, counting under her breath. When the fighters were close enough, she fired the shuttle's single rear gun. The containers exploded. The blast caught both fighters, destroying one and crippling the other. Jiwon spun the shuttle back around and restarted the engines. They jumped to faster-than-light speed just as the battleship's main guns fired where they had been. In the sudden quiet of hyperspace, everyone breathed. Yuna realized her hands were shaking. Where are we going? She asked. Coordinates are set for the Ember Nebula, Daehyun said. There is a hidden base there. Human resistance. The journey took 2 days. They traveled carefully, avoiding major space lanes. When they finally emerged from hyperspace, Yuna saw a massive cloud of red and gold gas stretching across space. Hidden inside, protected by the nebula's interference with sensors, was an asteroid base. Ships surrounded it. Human ships, but also others. She recognized designs from a dozen different species. All refugees, all survivors. They docked, and armed guards met them. But these guards smiled when they saw Daehyun. Captain Daehyun, one said. We thought you were dead. Not yet, he replied. Is Admiral Borum here? In the command center. She will want to see you. They walked through corridors carved into the asteroid. Everywhere people worked. Humans repaired ships alongside elves who had escaped the invasion. A group of insectoid krill fixed weapons with furry pothans. Species that had never cooperated before worked together. Admiral Borum was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She looked at Daehyun, then at Yuna, and her expression shifted to shock. Is that who I think it is? She asked. Queen Yuna of the Elven Worlds, Daehyun confirmed. We broke her out. You broke out the Elven Queen? Borum sat down heavily. Do you know what the Dravaxians will do when they find out? Hunt us, Daehyun said simply. They were hunting us anyway. Borum studied Yuna carefully. Your Majesty, we heard about the fall of your worlds. We tried to send help, but we were too late. I am sorry. You have nothing to apologize for, Yuna said. She looked around the command center, at the maps showing Dravaxian positions, at the people fighting a hopeless war. You are still fighting. That is more than most would do. We are too stubborn to quit, Borum said with a slight smile. It is a human failing. Or a human strength, Yuna corrected. Over the next days, Yuna learned about the resistance. They had been fighting for decades, hitting supply convoys, rescuing refugees, making the Dravaxians pay for every world they took. They could not win, not with their small numbers and limited resources, but they refused to stop. A scientist named Dr. Kyung showed Yuna something fascinating. He had been studying the combination of magic and technology, trying to merge elven power with human engineering. Your people have magic that can do amazing things, he explained, pointing at screens full of equations. But it is limited by the individual's power. Our technology can amplify and direct that power in new ways. He showed her a device, a simple metal gauntlet. When an elf channels magic through this, the output increases tenfold. We have barely started to explore the possibilities. Yuna touched the gauntlet. She felt her magic respond to it, flowing through circuits and conduits. It was strange but exciting. My people always believed magic and technology were separate, opposing forces. Perhaps, Dr. Kyung said, or perhaps they are two sides of the same coin waiting to be unified. A woman named Sora brought intelligence reports. She was thin and intense with eyes that never stopped moving. We have located Lord Taman, she told Yuna. He is in a fortress on your homeworld surrounded by Dravaxian guards. How many guards? Yuna asked. Too many for a direct assault, Sora admitted. But the Resistance has been planning raids against multiple targets. If you wanted, we could make Taman one of them. Yuna thought about revenge. Part of her wanted to see Taman pay for his betrayal. But another part, a wiser part, knew that revenge would not save her people. Not yet, she said. First, I need to understand what we are fighting for. Show me everything about the Resistance. They did. Yuna met fighters from a dozen species. She saw humans training with weapons that should have been impossible for them to use. She watched Jiwon teach other pilots her impossible maneuvers. She observed Minji combining technologies from different civilizations in ways no one had tried before. And she realized something. The humans did not just fight. They adapted. They learned. They took what others considered impossible and made it work through sheer determination and creativity. One evening, she found Daehyun on an observation deck, watching the stars through the nebula's glow. You gave up everything to save me, she said. Your colony, your families. The Dravaxians will punish them for your escape. I know, he said quietly. I think about them every day. But I realized something. If I kept following orders, kept being their tool, I would lose myself completely. And then my family would not have a son to be proud of. They would have a monster wearing my face. That is very human, Yuna observed. Choosing principles over survival. Maybe, he agreed. Or maybe it is just knowing that some things are worth more than staying alive. Your people understood that when you destroyed your crown. They stood in silence watching the stars. Finally, Yuna spoke. I was wrong about humans. I thought you were primitive, violent, short-lived. I did not understand that your short lives make you value every moment more. Your lack of magic made you creative in ways my people never needed to be. And your violence comes from passion, from caring deeply about things worth fighting for. We are not perfect, Daehyun said. No, Yuna agreed. But you are stubborn and brave and too foolish to know when to quit. And right now that is exactly what the galaxy needs. Admiral Borum called a meeting the next day. The command staff gathered, along with representatives from every species in the base. We have been playing defense for too long, Borum announced. Hiding, surviving, rescuing who we can. But the Dravaxian Empire grows stronger every day. If we do not act, eventually there will be nowhere left to hide. What are you proposing? Someone asked. We go on the offensive, Borum said. Hit them where it hurts. Show the galaxy that the Empire can be beaten. With what? Another voice challenged. We have a few dozen ships against thousands, Yuna stood. Every eye turned to her. With hope, she said simply. The Empire rules through fear. They make civilizations believe resistance is impossible. Part 4. The Reclamation. The first strike happened 3 weeks later. A Dravaxian supply convoy, heavily guarded, carrying weapons and supplies to occupied worlds. Intelligence said it would pass through the Keltor system at a specific time. The Resistance fleet waited in ambush. 15 ships against a convoy of 30. Terrible odds by any reasonable calculation. But humans, Yuna had learned, did not believe in reasonable calculations. All ships hold position. Admiral Borum's voice came through the communications. Wait for my signal. Yuna stood on the bridge of the Starfire, the ship Daehyun now commanded. Beside her, he watched the sensors with focused intensity. Minji had upgraded the ship's systems, combining elven defensive magic with human weapons. The result was something entirely new. Convoy entering the system, G1 reported from the pilot's seat. 32 ships. 6 are warships. 6 warships, someone muttered. We are going to die. Probably, Daehyun agreed cheerfully. But we will make them remember us. The convoy moved through space, confident in their superiority. They had no reason to fear ambush. Who would be foolish enough to attack them? Now, Borum commanded. The Resistance fleet dropped out of hiding behind the system's small moon. They fired everything at once. Missiles, energy weapons, and something new. Yuna channeled her magic through Dr. Kyung's amplifiers, and beams of pure force lanced out from the starfire, punching through shields that should have been impenetrable. The convoy scattered in confusion. 3 supply ships exploded before they could react. The warships turned to engage, but the Resistance fleet was already moving, using maneuvers that seemed impossible. Jiwon flew like she was dancing, weaving between enemy fire with impossible precision. A Dravaxian destroyer locked onto them, and she dove toward it instead of away, passing so close that Yuna could see faces through their bridge windows. The destroyer's own weapons hit their escort ships as they tried to track the starfire. "Someone tell me that worked," Jiwon called out. 2 escorts down, Minji confirmed. "But the destroyer is turning." "They are angry now." "Good," Daehyun said. "Angry enemies make mistakes." The battle lasted 20 minutes. In the end, the convoy was destroyed, and the Resistance fleet escaped with only minor damage. They had lost 1 ship, but they had proven something important. The Empire could be hurt. News of the attack spread through the underground networks. Species that had accepted Dravaxian rule began to whisper. Maybe the Empire was not invincible. Maybe resistance was possible. The second strike came a week later, then a third, then a fourth. Each time the Resistance used the same tactics. Hit hard, move fast, disappear before reinforcements arrived. They combined technology and magic in ways the Dravaxians could not predict. Yuna became the face of the rebellion. When they broadcast messages to occupied worlds, she spoke about hope and freedom. Elves who had gone into hiding began to emerge, joining the fight. Other species followed. A group of Krill warriors arrived at the asteroid base, their insectoid bodies bristling with weapons. "We heard the Queen fights," their leader said. "We will fight beside her." Pothan refugees brought their advanced sensors, giving the Resistance better intelligence. A Valkor diplomat defected from the Empire, bringing secrets about fleet movements and supply lines. The Resistance grew from dozens of ships to hundreds. Not enough to challenge the Empire directly, but enough to cause real damage. Yuna trained with the fighters, learning human combat tactics. They were different from elven methods. Less elegant, more practical. Where her people would plan carefully, humans would improvise. Where elves valued individual skill, humans worked as teams. "You think too much," Minji told her during a training session. "In a fight, you do not have time to calculate every option. You have to trust your instincts." "My instincts say running directly at an armed enemy is foolish," Yuna replied. "Exactly." Minji grinned. "That is why it works. They expect you to do the smart thing. Do the crazy thing instead." It was exhausting and exhilarating. For the first time in her long life, Yuna felt truly alive. Not just surviving, not just ruling, but fighting for something that mattered. She and Daehyun grew closer. They talked late into the night about their worlds, their hopes, their fears. He told her stories about Earth, about humanity's history of wars and peace, of terrible mistakes and amazing triumphs. "We are a young species," he said one night. "We make a lot of mistakes, but we learn from them. Eventually—" "You saved me," Yuna said quietly. "You threw away everything to do the right thing. That is not a young species. That is wisdom. Or stupidity," he replied with a smile. "Sometimes it is hard to tell the difference." One evening, Sora brought urgent news. "We intercepted a communication. Lord Taman is traveling to a Dravaxian base for a meeting. His escort will be light. If we wanted to capture him, this would be our chance." The command staff gathered to discuss it. Some argued it was too dangerous, too much risk for one target. Others wanted revenge for his betrayal. Yuna listened to all of them, then spoke. "Taman has information. He knows where hidden elven colonies are located. Every day he lives, more of my people die. We need to stop him." "It could be a trap," Admiral Borum warned. "Everything is a trap," Daehyun said. "The question is whether we are smart enough to turn it around." They planned the operation carefully. A small strike team would infiltrate the base while Taman was there. They would capture him and escape before the Dravaxians could respond. The team consisted of Yuna, Daehyun, Jiwon, and 6 others. They approached the base in a captured Dravaxian transport, using fake identification codes. The base security let them land without question. Inside, they moved through corridors with practiced efficiency. Yuna wore a hood to hide her distinctive appearance. They had studied the base layout for days, memorizing every turn and checkpoint. They found Taman in a conference room, meeting with Dravaxian officers. Through the window, Yuna saw him laughing. Comfortable in his betrayal, rage filled her chest. Easy, Daehyun whispered. We need him alive. They waited until the meeting ended and Taman left alone. In the corridor, they surrounded him. He looked up, saw Yuna, and his face went white. Hello, Taman, Yuna said softly. He tried to run. Ji-won tripped him. He fell hard, and before he could scream, they had him gagged and restrained. Alarms started blaring. Someone had noticed the intrusion. Move, Daehyun ordered. Back to the ship now. They ran through the base, dragging Taman with them. Dravaxian soldiers appeared, weapons firing. Yuna threw up a magical shield while the others returned fire. They fought their way to the landing bay, leaving bodies behind them. The transport lifted off just as reinforcements arrived. Energy blasts hit their shields, but Ji-won had them moving too fast. They broke through the base's defensive grid and jumped to hyperspace. Back at the asteroid base, they locked Taman in a secure cell. Yuna stood outside looking at the elf who had destroyed her kingdom. Why? She asked finally. 800 years of service. Why betray us? Taman looked at her with bitter eyes. Because I was tired of serving. Tired of watching you sit on a throne that should have been mine. Your family ruled for 10,000 years. You think that is justice? That is tyranny disguised as tradition. So you sold our entire civilization for power? I made a deal, he said. The Dravaxians promised me a place in their empire. Real power, not the illusion of it. And how is that working for you? Yuna asked. For the first time, Taman's confidence cracked. They lied. Of course they lied. I'm just another puppet, just another tool. But it is too late now. I have done things I cannot undo. Yuna felt her anger fade into something sadder. You could have been great, Taman. You were wise and strong. If you had asked, I would have shared power with you. But you chose ambition over loyalty. And now both of us have lost everything. Are you going to kill me? He asked. No, Yuna said. I am going to give you a choice. Help us. Tell us everything you know about Dravaxian operations. Maybe if we win, you can find some small redemption. And if I refuse, then you will sit in this cell while the war happens around you, and you will die alone and forgotten. She turned to leave. Think about it. Over the next days, Taman talked. He gave them locations of bases, fleet movements, political weaknesses. The information was valuable, but Yuna could not forget what he had done. Can you forgive him? Daehyun asked her one night. I do not know, Yuna admitted. He killed thousands of my people. But he was also right about some things. My family ruled for too long. We became comfortable, lazy. Maybe if we had changed, if we had shared power, he would not have betrayed us. You cannot blame yourself for his choices, Daehyun said. No. But I can learn from them. If we win this war, if we rebuild, it cannot be the same as before. We need something new. A government that represents everyone, not just one species or one family. That sounds suspiciously like human democracy, Daehyun said with a smile. Perhaps humans were right about some things. Yuna allowed. The resistance continued its campaign. Using Taman's information, they hit 3 major Dravaxian bases in coordinated strikes. Each victory brought more species to their cause, but the Dravaxians were not idle. They sent a massive fleet to hunt the resistance, led by Overlord Krixath himself. He was a legendary commander, known for crushing rebellions with absolute brutality. Part 5. The Crown of Two Worlds. The Dravaxian fleet emerged from hyperspace like a metal storm. 200 ships ranging from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts. At their center, Overlord Krixath's flagship, a vessel so large it blocked out stars. The resistance fleet waited. 130 ships. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and most strategic computers would say they had no chance of survival. But humans did not trust strategic computers. All ships. Hold formation, Admiral Borum commanded from her flagship. Wait for them to come to us. On the Starfire's bridge, Yuna wore the new circlet. It felt different from her old crown. Lighter, but also more alive. She could feel connections forming. Threads of magic reaching out to every elven survivor in the fleet. There were only 43 of them left, scattered across different ships. But through the circlet they became one. How do you feel? Taehyun asked quietly. Powerful, Yuna admitted, and terrified. If this fails, if I lose control, I could kill everyone. Then do not lose control, he said with a slight smile. Simple. You humans make everything sound simple. That is because we are too dumb to understand how complicated things are. Despite the tension, Yuna found herself smiling. Even facing death, Daehyun could joke. That was very human. The Dravaxian fleet advanced slowly, confident in their superiority. Krixath's voice boomed across all frequencies. Resistance fleet, you have one chance to surrender. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Refuse and we will destroy every ship, every station, everyone. You have 5 minutes. Should we respond? Someone asked Admiral Borum. No, she said. Let him wonder. The 5 minutes passed in silence. Then Krixath's voice returned, filled with anger. You chose death, so be it. All ships opened fire. The Dravaxian fleet unleashed everything. Energy weapons, missiles, plasma cannons. The sky lit up with destruction. It was beautiful and terrible at once. The Resistance fleet activated their shields. But these were not normal shields. Dr. Kyung's modifications allowed magic to reinforce the technology. Yuna poured power through the circlet, and every elven mage in the fleet added their strength. The shields blazed with light, absorbing impacts that should have destroyed them. Shields holding, Minji reported, sounding surprised. Holding at 90%. How is that possible? Magic, Yuna said through gritted teeth. The power flowing through her was immense. She could feel the other elves, their fear and determination mixing with her own. Return fire, Borum ordered. The Resistance fleet fired back, but they did not aim randomly. They had studied Dravaxian tactics for months. They knew which ships were command vessels, which carried supplies which were critical to the fleet's coordination. Jiwon piloted the Starfire through impossible spaces, weaving between enemy ships. Yuna channeled magic through the ship's weapons, turning energy beams into lances of pure force. Each shot punched through armor like paper. A Dravaxian cruiser exploded. Then another. The enemy fleet's formation wavered. They are not expecting real resistance, Daehyun observed. They thought this would be easy. Humans taught them otherwise, Yuna replied. The battle continued. Ships died on both sides, explosions lighting up space like fireworks. But the Resistance held their ground, refusing to break. Then reinforcements arrived. Not Dravaxian reinforcements. Ships from species the Resistance had rescued jumped into the system. Krill warships, Pothan cruisers, even some Valkor vessels whose crews had defected. Admiral Borum, this is Captain Hyon of the Liberation Fleet, a voice called. We heard you could use some help. More than 50 new ships joined the battle. The odds were still against them, but they were better now. Krixath's flagship moved forward, its massive guns targeting the asteroid base. One shot from those weapons would destroy everything, kill everyone. I am going after the flagship, Yuna announced. That is suicide, Daehyun said. Probably, Yuna agreed. But we cannot win while that ship controls the battlefield. Jiwon, get us close. You want to fly toward the giant death machine? Jiwon asked. Best mission ever. The Starfire dove toward the flagship, dodging fire from a dozen ships. They were too small and too fast for the big guns to track. Smaller turrets fired at them, but the shields held. What is the plan? Minji shouted over the sound of alarms. We ram it, Yuna said. We what? Daehyun stared at her. You heard me. Get close enough and I will use all the power in the circlet to punch through their shields. Then we ram their bridge. That will kill us, Minji pointed out. Not if we evacuate to escape pods first, Yuna said. Simple. She is thinking like a human now, Jiwon said approvingly. I like it. They flew closer to the flagship. Its shields were the strongest Yuna had ever seen, layers of energy that could withstand nuclear weapons. But she had the combined power of 43 elven mages, amplified by human technology. She gathered that power, feeling it build in her chest like a star about to explode. The circlet burned on her head, almost too hot to bear. Now, she screamed. She released everything at once. A beam of pure force, white and terrible, struck the flagship's shields. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shields collapsed, overloaded by more power than they were designed to handle. Their shields are down, Minji shouted. 30 seconds before they regenerate. Everyone to the escape pods, Daehyun ordered. Move, they ran. Jiwan set the Starfire on a collision course and locked the controls. They piled into the escape pod bay, 4 pods for the small crew. Go, 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 Daehyun yelled. The pods launched just as the Starfire struck the flagship's bridge. The explosion was massive, tearing through the command center. Krixath's flagship began to list, fires erupting across its hull. Yuna's pod tumbled through space. She could see the battle continuing around them. Without Krixath's coordination, the Dravaxian fleet was confused, ships firing without clear orders. Yuna, Daehyun's voice came through the pod's communicator. Are you alive? Yes, she replied. That was insane. Told you, he said. We specialize in insane. Admiral Borum's voice cut across all channels. All resistance ships press the attack. Show them what we are made of. The resistance fleet surged forward. They had lost many ships, but they were winning. Species that had been enemies worked together, combining their strengths. A Krill ship rammed a Dravaxian destroyer, sacrificing itself to save 3 human cruisers. Pothan fighters used their advanced sensors to coordinate strikes with terrifying precision. Valkor ships built for speed harried the enemy flanks, and through it all Yuna felt the magic flowing. The circlet still connected her to the other elves, and now she understood its true power. It was not just about being stronger together. It was about unity, about different people becoming one purpose. The Dravaxian fleet began to retreat. Without Krixath, without their flagship, they had lost their will to fight. They jumped to hyperspace, leaving their dead behind. The resistance fleet did not pursue. They were too damaged, too exhausted. But they had won. Yuna's pod was recovered by a friendly ship. She walked onto the bridge and saw celebration everywhere. People hugged, cried, laughed. They had survived. Daehyun found her in the crowd. His face was bruised, his armor scorched, but he was alive. They looked at each other, and suddenly words were not necessary. He pulled her close, and she let herself lean against him. We did it, he whispered. You did it, she corrected. Humanity showed us how. Over the next weeks, news spread across the galaxy. The Resistance had defeated a fleet twice their size. Overlord Krixath was dead, his command structure shattered. The Dravaxian Empire, for the first time in centuries, had suffered a major defeat. Species that had hidden in fear began to emerge. Colonies rebelled. Ships defected. The Empire's control started to crack. But Yuna knew the war was not over. The Dravaxians would send more fleets, would try to crush them with even greater force. The fight would continue for years, maybe decades. The Resistance established a new base, larger and better hidden. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to form a council. They called it the Coalition of Free Worlds. Yuna was offered leadership of the coalition, but she refused. I was a queen once, she said. I know the dangers of one person holding too much power. Let us build something new, a government of many voices, many species working together. Admiral Borum became the coalition's military commander. A Krill diplomat named Sekthar became the civilian leader. Dr. Kyung headed the science division, working to combine technologies from different worlds. And Yuna? She took the role of ambassador, traveling to different systems, convincing others to join their cause. Daehyun traveled with her, no longer a mercenary captain, but her partner in every way that mattered. They visited the ruins of her homeworld one day. The Dravaxians had abandoned it after the battle, focusing on defending more strategic locations. Yuna walked through her old palace, now just broken stones and shattered crystal. Do you miss it? Daehyun asked. Being queen? Sometimes, she admitted. But I think I like this better. I was born to rule, raised to believe my species was superior, taught that tradition was more important than change. I was wrong about all of it. She picked up a piece of crystal from the floor, a fragment of her old throne. My people are not better than others. Magic is not superior to technology. And tradition, while valuable, can also be a prison. So what will you do when this war ends? He asked.